The 12th Annual World Congress on Industrial Biotechnology, the world's largest industrial biotechnology event, is returning to beautiful Montreal, Canada in 2015. The Bio World Congress, linking chemistry, agriculture, and biotechnology to develop new value chains. So mark your calendar now for July 19 to 22nd, because this is the one event you cannot afford to miss. Join over 1,000 other high-level attendees from 700 companies and over 40 countries.
So, we work with all our clients, we encourage them to attend and to exhibit. We're exhibiting ourselves in 2014 for the second time. I'm sure that we'll be back in Montreal, and the Bio World Congress really is the event in the industry.
Top business executives, world-class scientists, biotech investors, and government policymakers, all stakeholders in building a vibrant, sustainable, bio-based economy.
Yes, we are excited about going to Montreal. It's a wonderful city. It has many great attractions. They're very supportive of life science conferences. It will be in the summer. It's going to be beautiful, so people can do business and also enjoy all the things that Montreal has to offer. So yes, we're very excited about next year.
The 2015 World Congress will feature 5 high-level plenary sessions and 8 breakout tracks, an exciting exhibit hall, and clean tech investor sessions, presentation of the prestigious George Washington Carver Award, and more than 1,000 one-on-one partnering meetings.
There's hundreds of companies here partnering. The partnering rooms, one-on-one here, I think we've had 40 meetings in 2.5 days on one-on-one meetings, and out of those 40 meetings, I'd say at least half are fruitful.
The 12th Annual World Congress on Industrial Biotechnology in Montreal. A great once-a-year opportunity to take your program to the next level.
Well, thanks for joining us here for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, along here with Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher. Phil, once again, talking trade, and we're getting to see the light at the end of the tunnel on this subject. We've seen the Senate pass something, now we've seen the House take similar action. At the end of last week, we saw the House decide to pass Trade Promotion Authority, but not the Trade Adjustment Assistance, and that was an all or nothing proposition. If both bills can go to the White House or none of them, and so nothing went to the White House. But this week saw action on Trade Promotion Authority and a compromise on Trade Adjustment Assistance. I know we were talking a little bit before we pressed the record button here on a Thursday afternoon, and it's kind of a complicated procedure, but Phil, can you walk us through it and just let us know what's going on with trade legislation on Capitol Hill this week?
Right. Well, let's just say that Fast Track TPA is back on track now, a week later. What happened a week ago was that the two bills were put together in one bill, and Democrats who opposed the president's trade agenda, that what they really want to stop is any new trade agreements, saw voting against one section of the bill, even though they liked the programs, as a way to stopping the entire bill. So we had several days of very intense negotiations between President Obama, the Republican leadership of Congress, and pro-trade Democrats, a number of whom were meeting with the President late yesterday afternoon to work out the final details of this plan. What they've done now is they've split the bill. We have Trade Promotion Authority.
Okay.
It's a separate bill. It passed the House now, 218 to 208. It's headed to the Senate. We expect next week that the Senate will take it up, pass it. It could be headed to the President by the end of next week. The Trade Adjustment Assistance, which is a package of programs that provide training, cash assistance, and so forth to workers and businesses and farmers who've been harmed by trade deals. That will be handled separately. It will be folded into yet another trade bill and will be passed separately.
Now, if my memory serves me correctly, when this process all began in the Senate, it was there was a big to-do about whether or not they were going to do these bills as a large package or individually. And it passed the Senate, it's gotten through, and now they're sending them back to the Senate, but they're sending them back individually. Is this just getting to a point where we've got lawmakers throwing their hands in the air and say, let's just get done with this, let's just get it over with, whatever needs to be done?
It's procedure, it's democracy in action, it's a divided government. The trade adjustment assistance is very important, particularly to Democrats. And it's a carrot to bring on some Democratic votes. And so the idea was that they need to move in parallel. The easiest way to do that was to put them together, as they did in the Senate. They passed them. This was back in May. They sent the bill to the House, but then the Republican leadership there decided to hold separate votes on the trade adjustment assistance and then on trade promotion authority, the fast track portion of the bill. That's where the problems came, because again, Democrats who are opposed to the president's agenda decided the only leverage that they really had to bring everything to a halt was to vote against the trade adjustment assistance. And they did that even though the president came to the Capitol and begged them not to, said, play it straight. Even if you're opposed to my trade policy, vote for trade adjustment assistance. They didn't buy it. They voted against it, but now it looks like the president and the leadership over here in Congress have figured out a workaround, if you will.
Right. Like we said at the beginning of the video, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel on trade discussions. And of course, these TPA and TAA discussions are so important because of the budding trade agreements we have, or the United States has, I should say, with across the Pacific and across the Atlantic. The Pacific one much closer to fruition, but still these other countries want to see that trade promotion authority in place before the best offer, as the administration would say, is brought to the table. Now, looking outside of trade, also saw some action in both chambers on the appropriations process, specifically relating to agriculture, some provisions in some House and Senate bills looking to block implementation of waters of the U.S. We've seen this already in the House, but now, as we were speaking before, the House is kind of doubling down on their provision to get the waters of the U.S. provision blocked, and also seeing some action on the dietary guidelines implementation. And Phil, it's not uncommon to see policy writers on appropriations bills by any means, but should these things keep going, should we continue to see progress, we're going to see some kind of a showdown at the White House over the efforts of his administration versus the efforts of a Republican Congress.
Right. Well, appropriations bills are considered must-pass legislation. So lawmakers are fairly limited in what they can do. Usually, mostly what they can do is stop things from happening by taking the money away, saying you can't spend money to implement this regulation. And that's what Republicans are trying to do. With these provisions that you mentioned, both in bills that fund the EPA, there are provisions that would block endangered species listings. That happens to be in the same bill. There are also some language in the appropriations bill now that would fund the Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration. The big question is what happens. How do these provisions become law? And that's going to involve some negotiations that are going to go on for months, probably to the end of the year. The Democrats in the Senate and the White House have raised objections broadly to the spending caps that are in all of these bills. And the Democrats in the Senate have said they will filibuster all of these bills, not let any of them across the Senate floor unless Republicans agree to raise the spending levels. And so there's going to be a big push at some point for some kind of agreement to raise the spending. And that will also be the time when there's going to be some probably pretty intense negotiations over which one of these policy writers get into whatever final spending legislation goes to the White House.
The appropriations process is just getting started, and we're just getting started covering it. We'll bring you top to bottom coverage of that and many other agricultural issues on Capitol Hill as the weeks progress. And we thank you for joining us for this week's Washington Week in Review. For Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.